Well, finally, a little bit of redemption, a little bit of confidence rediscovered with last week's picks. 7-8 versus the spread, but 10-5, picking the winners straight up. At this point in time, I'll take something. Even the great ones have a slump every once in a while. And while I'm not great, I most certainly am in a slump. So I'm hoping week 7 is the start of something. You know what? I'm not even going to say anything more before I jinx myself. So here we go with my week 8 NFL picks. Now, of course, I knocked it out of the park 100% with that Thursday night pick of Miami plus the 3 over Baltimore, to which the response was Baltimore 40, Miami nothing. And I resemble the remarks that I picked the Dolphins in large part because Jay Cutler wasn't playing. I resemble that remark maybe about 60 to 70% of the way. There were other factors, too, that the Dolphins had a little bit of momentum. The Dolphins were a bit of a hot team. They were finding ways to come back from double-digit deficits, and the Ravens had looked like trash the past few weeks. So it wasn't just totally the fact that Jay Cutler wasn't playing. It was just the majority of that. Okay. Busted. Take me away. Anyways, even though in previous weeks I've nailed the Thursday night game and then had crappy weeks, so maybe this is the reverse of the karma, and I won't miss any more. That ain't happening, but let's see how I do. All right, the Sunday game, Sunday morning, London. You get treated, hip hip cheerio and all that jazz, to the Vikings taking on the Browns. Oh, goody. Now, on paper, Minnesota's favored by 10, and you would say you feel like you're insane to do anything other than taking the Vikings minus the 10. But also understand that with these London games, you just never know. Typically, one team travels well and one team does not. And what you think is a foregone conclusion isn't necessarily the case. Sound good? No, I'm taking the Vikings minus the 10. Give me a break. You got the Raiders traveling to Buffalo to take on the Bills. The Raiders with that last second victory, over the Chiefs last Thursday night. They've had a long week to rest and recover and prepare for the Bills, who seem to be a good team right now. Buffalo's favored by 2.5 at home, which they should be. But I will take the Raiders plus the 2.5 because I feel like there's got to be a couple of upsets this week. The Colts travel to the Bengals. Cincinnati's favored by 12, and honestly, they should be, especially with the way the Colts played last week. I mean, they got embarrassed at home by the Jaguars, allowed 10 sacks, shut out 27-0. Sometimes when teams get embarrassed, they come back the next week and they play a little bit better, which leads me to be a little bit concerned about the 12-point spread. That said, this is a Chuck Pagano team, so I don't know how much I really need to worry about that. Give me the Bengals minus the 12. A sneaky good game, I think, is the Chargers traveling to Foxborough to take on the Patriots. And while the Patriots are favored by 8.5, which they kind of should be, this is a Chargers team whose defense has been playing better the past 3 weeks. A Chargers team that has won 3 in a row. A Chargers team that, if they had better field goal kicking the first couple of weeks of the season, might be 5-2. And we're talking about an entirely different narrative in the AFC West and maybe the AFC as a whole, even with the flaws that the Chargers have offensively and defensively. So I don't think this is just such a foregone conclusion that coming off of that big impressive win Sunday night over the Falcons, that the Patriots are just going to steamroll the Chargers, because I think I could make the argument right now that the Chargers are at least equivalent to the Falcons, if not slightly better. I'll take the Patriots to win, but I think the Chargers might score a touchdown late to bring it under the 8.5-point spread, so give me the Chargers to cover. The Bears travel to New Orleans to take on the suddenly somewhat resurgent Saints. The Saints are favored by 10.5, and I will say this. I fully expect the Saints to win this game Sunday, but the Bears' defense has played pretty well the past few weeks, and I think the 10.5-point spread, even with it being in New Orleans, even with New Orleans having a little bit of momentum, is a pretty big ask. I do think the Bears will cover, but I do think New Orleans will win. Atlanta goes to the Jets. And I was surprised. And now, granted, when I put this together, the spread was Atlanta minus 7. I'm sure it's narrowed down since then, but I'm going off of based on the time that I pulled it, which can work both ways for me. So right now, Atlanta is favored minus 7 based off of the spread that I pulled at the time that I pulled it. And even if it's narrowed, I'm sure it's probably narrowed to 3.5, 4, maybe 4.5. I still think that's a pretty big ask. This Falcons team is very close to being a 1-5 football team. They were really, really bad in New England Sunday night when they should have had so many reasons in the world to play. They should have been looking for vengeance. They should have been looking for blood. And they just laid an egg offensively against a defense that hasn't stopped any damn body all year. going to a Jets team that's playing above themselves, way above themselves, in New York. Matt Ryan doesn't play as well on the road as you saw last week. That offense just doesn't travel as well on the road. You saw that last week. I'm going to take the Jets to win because why not? Why not? San Francisco goes to Philly to take on the Eagles. The Eagles are big favorites here, as they probably should be. The 13.5-point spread may be kind of big, but the 49ers just got housed by the Cowboys last week in Santa Clara. I'll take the Eagles minus 13.5. Carolina, coming off of that 17-3 embarrassing loss to the Bears last Sunday, goes to Tampa Bay to take on a suddenly scuffling 2-4 Buccaneers team. Tampa Bay, I know, is favored by half a point. I like Carolina in this matchup. I don't think Tampa Bay can stop anybody. I think the Carolina Panthers are a better team, and Cam had a bad week in terms of the press, and typically when he does, he comes out and does some good things. One of the marquee games of the week to me is Deshaun Watson and the Texans traveling to Seattle to take on Russell Wilson and the Seahawks. The Seahawks are favored by 7.5. I think Seattle wins, but I think this is a close game and should be an exciting game. Maybe. We'll see. It could either be one of those really ugly defensive battles, slugfest, or it could be a high-powered, explosive offensive slugfest. I do think Houston keeps it close and covers the 7.5 points. I think Dallas will beat Washington in Washington. Dallas is favored by 1, frankly, as they should be. And Zeke might run wild on the Redskins. Sunday night, you've got the Steelers traveling to Detroit to take on the Lions. Even though it's a home game for the Lions, the Steelers are a good team. Even though Big Ben it's a funny thing because Big Ben doesn't play well on the road typically, but Matthew Stafford and the Lions really don't beat any good teams. So give me the Steelers minus the 2. And then the Monday night game, you've got the suddenly woeful offense of the Broncos going into Kansas City to take on the Chiefs. Chiefs are favored by 7.5. I like KC to win. I like Denver to cover the 7.5 because, honestly, what's really going to hold back the Chiefs from going to the Super Bowl this year, as much as I'd like to just say Alex Smith because of my own biases, the simple fact is it's not just going to be him. It's going to be that defense who, especially in the secondary, can't stop any damn body. So those are my picks. Hopefully I can do at least 10 or 5 or whatever the hell how many games there are this week. If not better. And I probably just now jinxed myself to another losing record. It's been a rough year. Hopefully I'm coming out of that slump. If not, I need to go find a slump buster.